The X Zone radio and TV show is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone radio and TV show or in any manner endorsed by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, Talkstar Radio Network, its affiliated stations, or employees.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome to the X Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern. The show is then repeated in its entirety from 2 a.m. until 6 a.m. on the Talkstar Radio Network, the X Zone Broadcast Network, and our growing family of broadcast affiliates right across Canada, the United States, Central America, the Caribbean, South America, the Pacific Rim, Australia, Asia, India, Africa, and Europe. If you'd like to give us a call toll-free worldwide, 1-800-610-7035. That's toll-free worldwide at 1-800-610-7035. My email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, on MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com, and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. X Zone Nation, my first guest tonight is the Reverend CHAVAH AIMA, and we're going to be talking to CHAVAH about anti-aging or reversal of age, how to stay young, I guess we could call it. We're looking at aging this first hour. And, when we hear the word alchemy, we think of medieval and Renaissance alchemists trying to turn metals into gold. Remember the story about Rumpelstiltskin? But alchemy has another meaning, magic that transforms something common into something of a higher value. Now, our guest this hour is an ordained minister and founder of the nonprofit Enlightened Life Sanctuary in Austin, Texas, is an expert on raw foods, healthy lifestyles, and the secrets of ancient esoteric traditions. Now, CHAVAH has created what she calls alchemical yoga and written a book entitled Living Light, the 21-Day Alchemical Regeneration Plan, to share her knowledge. Now, here are some websites. www.enlightenedlife.org, www.alchemicalyoga.com, and finally, livinglifeplan.com. Joining me now from Austin, Texas, is our first guest this hour, CHAVAH AIMA.
Hi, Rob. It's a very unusual name. It's CHAVAH AIMA. It's Hebrew, and Shiva is, of course, the Indian god, which I love when people call me after Shiva. But it is actually CHAVAH, and it's Hebrew. Thank you so much for having me on your show today.
Well, it's our great pleasure, CHAVAH. And what was your inspiration for doing the work that you do as a modern alchemist?
Well, worked as a psychotherapist for many years, and in the course of that, studied a lot of the esoteric traditions of spiritual psychology, like Kabbalah and alchemy. Spiritual alchemy is different from the kind of laboratory alchemy that a lot of people know about from the old alchemical drawings, but the alchemist taught in symbolic form. And one of the things that I discerned in decoding these symbolic images and teachings of the alchemists was that they kept pointing to the digestive tract as the key to regenerating the body, mind, and soul. And I started to focus all of my work and research and practices in that direction, and I saw amazing results.
Shiva, please stand by. You and I have to take a commercial break. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Exonation, the Reverend Shiva Aima is our special guest this first hour of tonight's show for Tuesday, March the 16th. One website, www.livinglifeplan.com, and we'll be giving other websites out for the Reverend on the other side of this news break. No, it's not the news break yet, guys. It is our regular 2-minute break, and we'll be back as we continue live and around the world from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. Welcome back, everyone. CHAVAH AIMA is our special guest. And you are a psychotherapist or a psychologist, then you decided to go into the work that you're doing now as a modern-day alchemist. And
Sure, spiritual alchemy has a lot in common with outer psychology, except it goes far beyond the personal level, of course.
Now, you studied 12 years at a mystery school and have founded your very own. What are mystery schools, first of all, and what is their role in preserving ancient esoteric knowledge?
Well, back in ancient times in the West, in Israel and Arabia, there were traditions of God realization, much like the Hindu traditions of yoga and meditation. And in the Western culture, the churches became dominant, and as they became dominant, they suppressed a lot of those teachings. And however, there were groups of initiates of those teachings who kept the teachings going in oral form or through creating different symbols that could be unlocked, because symbols are one thing that all cultures have in common,
Sure.
you know. And so they coded all of the teachings, and then they were preserved by ongoing groups of initiates. And then in the late 1800s in Europe, mystery schools began to, promote themselves and say, we're here, because it became safe again to say, we have this information, we have these teachings. And so they began bringing out the teachings of the alchemists. Now, part of the reason that the alchemical teachings are so difficult to understand is because they were written in symbolic language as well as using symbolic images. Self-preservation on the part of the authors, given the times they lived in. But, the modern mystery schools that inherited these ancient teachings have done a really excellent job of reinterpreting them in terms of modern understandings. And it turns out that alchemy is a spiritual process for transmuting the human into the divine.
How come it seems that this knowledge was lost for so many years and all of a sudden, bang, it's back? What happened during these missing years?
It was primarily lost in the European culture and in the Western consciousness. In the Eastern traditions, if you look at the teachings of alchemy in both sides of the globe, they're teaching the same thing. But in the West, the church, we had all the years of the Inquisition. That was, not just the Catholic Church in the beginning, but then ultimately the Anglican Church was involved in later times as well. And anyone who didn't follow what they taught for their spirituality was going to be executed. So, it was really the Holocaust of the spiritual people of Europe, and an attempt to bring everyone into line with the Christian way, or the way of thinking that the Catholic Church had in mind.
So let me ask you this. How do people know which religion is real, which one is the most accurate, and which one to follow then, if there seems to be so much political play when it comes to the true beginnings of religions?
Yeah, well, it's true spirituality is really always simple. It's not complicated, and it's not political. There's only one religion, and that religion is love.
I agree.
And that's the thing that brings everyone together, and everything else that isn't that separates. And anything that separates isn't really about spirituality. It's about division.
What changes have you seen yourself over the last couple of years when it comes to people wanting to learn the ancient ways, wanting to learn about, spiritual alchemy?
Yeah, two things are happening, Rob. One is a lot of people are waking up to a different way of looking at the world, to a dawn of a new consciousness. And they're reaching out and saying, where are these practices? Where are these methods? They know inherently in their DNA and their spiritual level of being that there are things that will help them get where they know they want to be. They don't want structured forms of religion anymore. They don't want things that separate. They want things that unify and bring greater love and peace and heal the planet and heal their bodies. And so they're reaching out. Simultaneously, some of the people who have been involved in the mystery school traditions, which, have been membership organizations that give out the teachings through a series of, courses that you get by mail, correspondence courses, things like that. Now a lot of people who are graduates of these schools, or several key people, are coming forward. I'm one of them, putting the teachings once again into the hands of the people who want it, into the public, taking it away from the secret societies. And we don't really have need for that anymore because the persecution has ended in the West, and we're at the dawn of a whole new age. And so these disciplines are going to be released now and going to be made public and made available for everyone to use, to get that inner contact with God that is so important in giving you your own authority to live your own life.
How are we to know that, and please, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, that spiritual alchemy is just not one of these flash-in-the-pan New Age religions that pop up one day and sizzle out the next?
That's a great question, but spiritual alchemy is tens of thousands of years old. It goes back to ancient Egypt. It's the furthest thing from New Age. It's old age, and it's been around forever. It's the science that the yogis have used to bring themselves into radiant health, longevity, high energy, great states of consciousness. The same technologies were used by the Egyptians for the same purposes. It's all about, we were meant to be divine beings when we were created, and that goes back to the very beginning of time. So it's not really New Age. It's just that it's coming back into awareness because it's been through a period of suppression by the church and the state. The authoritarian structures, governmental structures, religious structures, their interest is in keeping followers. And these divine teachings that were given by, through the course of time to humanity are about becoming your own authority, having your own direct relationship with God, and not being in need of an intermediary or someone to tell you what to believe or how to believe it.
All right, I understand what spiritual alchemy is. Now, that's pretty straightforward. But what is alchemical yoga?
Alchemical yoga is a new lifestyle support system that I've created that brings together the best of the Eastern and Western teachings of spiritual development. I studied not only in the Western mystery traditions for many years and practiced all of the practices there. I also lived in India and trained in different ashrams and learned the yoga traditions of India as well. And I've brought together the best of those methods and created alchemical yoga, which is a yoga for life. It's a way of living your life. It includes, of course, the physical yoga, the asanas, but also specific alchemical meditations, a living life with spiritual consciousness informing every aspect of it, learning to access this inner authority that I'm talking about, having greater power in your life, and eating in a way that keeps your body vital, healthy, and alive for as long as you'd like it to be alive.
So I would imagine I wouldn't find you in a fast food restaurant.
No, not unless it was fast raw food. There are several really amazing fast raw food restaurants, so you surely could find me there.
Now, you said alchemical meditation. Once again, how do we relate alchemy to meditation?
Well, let's talk a little more about alchemy. Alchemy has a history in China. Mm-hmm. There's Chinese alchemy. This is the teachings of Mantak Jia and the Universal Tao for healing. There's also the teachings of India, of alchemical tantra. There's the teachings of Western alchemy or Hermetic alchemy. There's alchemical Kabbalah, all of these from the Western schools and the Egyptian schools. And alchemy is about commanding your body as spirit and disidentifying with the lower self and seeing the spark of the divine within you, and then doing everything possible to allow that to come through in the greatest possible quantity in your life.
All right, so why is it then when you talk to most people who aren't aware of the different histories behind alchemy, we all think of changing non-precious metals into precious metals?
Yeah, that's part of the symbolic language. The alchemists talked about the chakra system. The chakras, in the Indian yoga traditions, there's 7 chakras in the body, the 7 centers of force, and those are actually located in the etheric body, and those vitalize the physical body. The alchemists called those chakras by the names of the different metals. And when they referred to working with metals or transmuting one metal into another, they were referring to raising the energy from one chakra to another. So the base chakra, the root chakra, was referred to as lead, and the heart chakra was referred to as gold. So when you changed lead into gold, you raised the kundalini energy, the life force energy of your body, from the lower chakra into the heart chakra, making you a more loving, more radiant being.
You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Please stand by. My guest this hour is Chavah Aima, and her website is www.enlightenedlife.org. She also has alchemicalyoga.com and livinglifeplan.com. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as the X Zone continues live from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the Talkstar Radio Network and the X Zone Broadcast Network. Once again, our toll-free worldwide number, 1-800-610-7035. My email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. We'll be back on the other side of this news break. Don't go away. Girl like you could ever care for me, Rosanna.
Hi, this is Ken Elliott. When I'm floating around the universe, I always try to tune in to Rob McConnell.
Hi-ho there, Timothy Frog on Sesame Street. When I want to find out what's going on with UFOs or ghosts, I listen to the X Zone with Rob McConnell.
This is Les Corrigan from Target Internet Development. You're listening to Rob McConnell on the X Zone Radio Show. This is John Hogue, prophecy scholar, and you're listening to Rob McConnell in the X Zone.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome back, everyone. 1-800-610-7035 is worldwide. My email address, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. We're talking about alchemical spirituality, alchemical meditation, alchemical yoga. Our special guest of this hour is CHAVAH AIMA. And her website, Exonation, I'm going to give it to you again because I was giving you the wrong site. It's www.livinglightplan.com. That's www.livinglightplan.com. That's livinglightplan.com. CHAVAH, how are the people in the the Austin, Texas area where you live, are they becoming more and more susceptible to alchemical enlightenment?
I think it's a worldwide phenomenon. My work encompasses many countries. I've taught all over the world. I'm based in Austin, Texas, which is a beautiful place, and the people are very conscious here. Austin has no less than 5 raw vegan restaurants, which is amazing for a city this size. People in Austin absolutely embrace everything that they can do to be healthy and fit and regenerate their bodies to remain youthful for many years.
Your book, Shadow of the Guru, Spiritual Empowerment and the Dark Side, explores how certain spiritual leaders recruit and retain followers. Now, it seems especially relevant given the deaths and the injuries last year at the Arizona Sweat Lodge retreat to ask, how do you tell a true spiritual leader from a false guru?
Yeah, the incident in Sedona is really very sad and shows a lot of, the confusion that goes on in people trying to find a good spiritual teacher that's that isn't going to cause you trouble or cause you harm. And it's not always easy to spot those beings. It's one thing that you can always count on if it's a true guru is that the person will be very humble, very kind, very compassionate, very patient, and secondly, they'll be accessible. You can approach them, talk to them directly. They often give you a hug. They're very supportive people. A good, true spiritual guru is really a blessing to have around you. You don't find true spiritual teachers and true gurus doing things like selling wealth seminars and trying to get you to buy an excessive amount of products or giving you a rapid-fire sales pitch or encouraging you to sign up for ever more expensive training. Those are some of the main signs. I know one thing that happens with a lot of false gurus is that they use a kind of hypnosis, and it all begins by manipulating the conditioning that people have about authority. And one of the ways that they do that, that's a hallmark sign for me, is that they'll appear before their followers on an elevated stage, usually sitting in a special chair of some kind, and usually only the members of the inner circle can approach them. This kind of thing. So it's not all that hard. Again, true spirituality is very simple, but it's important to be mindful of those things when you go out exploring.
What are the most common reasons why someone would leave an established theology, such as Christianity or Judaism, and go into a alchemical spiritual enlightenment? Is it a religion or is it
It's not a religion. No, this is the thing, and this is the thing about yoga. The alchemy is the yoga of the West, and yoga, the whole yoga tradition I'm talking about, not the yoga classes, which is more common in the West, but in India, there's a whole tradition of spirituality, of living spirituality every day of your life, and that's called yoga. And alchemy is the same thing in the West. It's a way of living your life where you have greater consciousness, better health, longer life, more contact with spirit, better direction from your inner spiritual authority, and more empowerment and success and happiness in your life. It's not about religion in terms of going to some external authority, though we do have to learn, so we need to go to reliable teachers in the beginning, but the teacher gives you practices, and you use those practices on your own, and you come into greater states of personal awareness and consciousness, better command of your body and your life. And this is one of the reasons that religions oppose the teachings, is because it gives the person the direct contact with God and empowers them into their own spiritual authority, and then they don't have a need for a religion anymore.
All right, let me give you this hypothetical situation. I come to you and I say, Chava, I want to become part of your way of living. I want to learn how to connect with my spirit using alchemy. How would I proceed?
Great. Well, the first start would be, you would be given some things to read, to learn, and then I would give you some basic practices to get started. The Living Light program, the 21-day alchemical regeneration plan, is really one of the beginning practices of the alchemical yoga path. It's something that you'll do over and over again. It's a 3-week deep cleansing program that heals, cleanses, purifies, and regenerates your body. But it also has a lot of effect on your mind. It relieves stress and brings you into greater states of mental clarity. It increases your energy. All of this is done by diet, yoga, meditation, and awareness of solar energy. I love the fact that you played the song Walking on Sunshine, because the Living Light plan is all about how our bodies are made out of sunshine, and how we need to get more of this living light into our bodies in order to reverse aging, lose weight, get rid of toxins. All these things are important when you start the spiritual path, because we have inside of us conditioning of all different kinds. We're conditioned emotionally to behave in certain ways. We're conditioned mentally to think certain things and believe certain things. And we're conditioned physically to eat in a certain way. And all of these conditionings limit who we really are. So the Living Light plan just starts to work with expanding you on all of those levels, taking away all the old things, debris, toxins, erroneous conditioning, wrong beliefs. All those things are dissolved over the course of 3 weeks using these alchemical methods.
How much would it cost me to start?
The book is only $15, and it has even recipes for the program. There's the meditations are also on a CD. And you can get a package deal on the book and CD at the publisher's website, which is the one you've been giving out, livinglightplan.com. And it's the best price on the internet. So for $30, you have the beginning of a very powerful spiritual practice that you can start doing right away. It tells you step by step in the book how to do it. It has menu plans, shopping lists, instructions on how to do everything, illustrated yoga, the meditations, the breath work, the principles of the program, and spiritual inspiration, more than 104 recipes. And the meditation disc has the program meditations, which is a different alchemical meditation each week of the program. And after you finish the program and you go back to your regular diet, which will be improved, you won't go back to eating the bad things you were eating before. You'll be eating much healthier when you finish. You'll be amazed at the differences that have come about in your life and in your spiritual awareness, your emotional states, and your mental clarity. If you need to lose weight, you will have lost weight. People have lost up to 26 pounds during the 3-week program. When they need to lose weight. So it is a very important protocol for spiritual life to purify the body. And in the process of doing that, because we incorporate the specific meditations for regenerating the body and specific yoga practices for deeper cleansing and greater spiritual awareness, it's quite an accelerated event. And I've had people over the years have had amazing experiences in 21 days. And that's a really good way to kickstart your intention to live life in a more spiritually conscious way. And then there are additional practices that you can learn following that continue to help you expand.
Can you share with us some of the success stories that you've heard yourself from people who have followed your plan?
Yeah, in addition to the weight loss,
yes.
I've had people have had lowered cholesterol. They've had their cholesterol levels return to normal during the 3 weeks of the program. They've had decrease in blood pressure. If they had high blood pressure, it goes down. They have a dramatic turnaround in diabetes, more energy. The wrinkles of the face go away. There's a glow in the skin that often hasn't been there for years. The people just feel better. They feel more clear. They have better meditations. Their bodies are more flexible and also stronger because of the yoga practices. And they have a more positive outlook on life.
How about their spiritual connections? How have they increased?
Because of the nature of the alchemical meditations in the program, some of which are based in Tibetan Chinese traditions, some of them are from the West, and because of the nature of those traditional alchemical meditations, people have actually entered into states of samadhi through some of the meditations during the course of doing the program. Samadhi is a state of complete absorption in divine consciousness. It's considered a relatively rare event on the spiritual path, but one that is really transformative in terms of how it changes your identity in a very expansive and positive way. And to be able to say that someone used the program and actually attained that state is a pretty remarkable thing. So the spiritual aspects of the program are very profound. I've had people say they have greater awareness of their aura. They can feel their skin tingling all over their bodies in meditation. You're getting more light energy into your body by all of these practices and by the diet and the cleansing. And as the old debris and dark toxins fall away, there's greater and greater light. And that changes everything in your being, but certainly has a profound effect on your spiritual awareness.
What is soul analysis and how does it work?
Soul analysis is a method that I developed several years ago. I'm going to say probably 12 years ago now. In the process of studying the mystical traditions, I came across the esoteric teachings of what would be called Kabbalistic tarot. And I read some old manuscripts that seemed to indicate that there was more to the tarot than we realized. And by decoding these manuscripts and working with the system that I discovered in that process, I was able to develop a method where I can tell a person a little bit about themselves, quite a bit about themselves actually, by their date of birth, by the month and day of birth. So if I get the month and day of birth of the person, I can say, I can see a lot of things about the 3 levels of being. In Kabbalistic psychology, we have 3 levels of the human is not just the personal being with the body down here. That's only one component. We also have the individuality or the soul level of the person, and then we have the spiritual essence, which is that part of the being that is the spark of the divine, that has no form but enters into these other forms, being the individual soul and the personality. So I can see all three of those levels, and I call these the soul analysis profiles. And that's the beginning of the soul analysis method. So people would come and get a session where I would go through their profile, all of their data with them, and share with them the various components, energies, characteristics, intentions, karmas, challenges, rewards of the soul, and the way that the persona is actually going to most ideally work in harmony with that soul. So it's a very profound method that seeing your profile really gives you a complete change in the way you viewed yourself, and it's really a marvelous method.
Chava, please stand by. You and I have to take a commercial break. It's our final break for this hour. Exonation, for more information, here's the proper website, www.livinglightplan.com. That's www.livinglightplan.com. LIVINGLIGHTPLAN.com. We'll be back on the other side of this break as the X Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the Talkstar Radio Network and the X Zone Broadcast Network. Don't go away. And welcome back, everyone. Chava, when somebody dies according to alchemical philosophy, what happens to them?
Well, there is no death. The soul, the spirit, the individual consciousness goes on forever. Of course, becoming unified into the one consciousness over time. But we would say that the soul leaves the body. The personality dissolves with the body because, we have the philosophy of reincarnation, which says we have numerous births. So this personality that we have in this life is only for this life, which again points to the true identity, which is that inhabits all of these forms over the ages. And that leads to the soul, which is an individual identity as well. And that soul departs from the physical plane and goes on to a place of resolving any remaining attachments to the physical plane, and then ideally merges into the light of the one consciousness once again, which will be regenerated again at another time. Although the alchemists say what the alchemist is trying to do from life to life is to attain sufficient wisdom to not have to go through the rebirth process, to get free from the wheel of birth and death and rebirth. So this is the whole point of the alchemical teachings, and this is one of the reasons they're interested in staying in the body as long as possible, keeping the body alive as long as possible. There are many reports of immortal alchemists, and they teach that we can attain immortality. Now, the purpose of that isn't just to be here on the planet all the time, but to be in the body long enough to get free of the conditioning that I spoke of earlier, and actually bring in all of the soul energy as to the highest degree possible to completely enlighten the body-mind from the spiritual level down. And once that has occurred, then the body becomes transcendent as well. And that would be referred to in some traditions as ascension. In alchemy, it would be the attainment of the body of light or the solar body. And at that point, you no longer have to be reborn. If the consciousness then wants to return, the alchemist can simply create an adult body at will without having to go through birth and conditioning and all of that. This is the science, the ancient science of the alchemist, and there are, in fact, some immortal living alchemists on the planet.
What is the oldest person you've met?
Oh, gosh, I couldn't even tell you his age. It would have to be in the hundreds of years.
Interesting.
There are beings in India that many people have met and have spoke of that are known to be at least 300 or 400 years old. They're not going shopping in the Walmart. You're not going to run into them easily. I can tell you that. But up in the remote mountain regions, in caves,
that's where you'll find them.
There are beings such as that. Yeah, amazing.
I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been a great pleasure. I wish you continued success on X Zone Nation. For more information, visit livinglightplan.com. That's livinglightplan.com. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news. Don't go away.
She rides the night.